noite. O convidado desta semana do Por Outro Lado é o escritor norte-americano Paul Auster. Esteve em Portugal uns dias a dar entrevistas, a trabalhar que nem um doido e, enfim, eu vou tentar falar com ele numa mistura de inglês e francês, porque eu prefiro falar francês e vou tentar falar inglês. Good night. Good evening.
Good evening.
Paul Auster. The main subject of your books, I think, is the coincidences. Is it true? It's my idea of you.
I never thought of my books as being particularly about coincidence. I think some of the true stories that I write about in the Red Notebook and
Yes.
Why Write and those true stories, there I talk about such things. But in the novels, not that much, actually.
Yes. Well, in Leviathan, there's another problem. There's something that happens and provokes another
Yes,
thing,
yes.
and another. So a chain of things.
But everything in the world is a chain of,
Yes.
of events. Sometimes we can control them, but most of the time we can't. So yes, someone picks up a notebook off the street, and it unleashes all kinds of terrible and strange events. But to me, this is the way reality works. It's not particularly exceptional. Unforeseen things are happening all the time.
Yes, and well, it's a cliche, but we say reality is harder and stranger than
Fiction, yes.
fiction. Do
But
you think that
it is true in a
It
way.
is true?
Yeah, because life is just so mystifying. We don't understand it. You know, there's so much that's beyond what we can grasp intellectually or emotionally that it just leads us to a condition of confusion, and we try our best to make sense of things, but usually we can't, because we don't even know what's inside ourselves. So how can we really know what's inside another person?
But you write a lot about your life, your own life. Sometimes it's your life is in your books. Sometimes, well, I think in Leviathan.
No. I think actually my novels are not autobiographical at all.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that some of your some parts of your life are there. I don't think it's autobiographical, but there is some
certain bits, yes,
Yes?
yeah. But every novelist does this. Everybody uses something. It's interesting that in that novel, Leviathan, the narrator, Peter Aaron,
Yes.
marries,
marries
Iris. Now, of course, I'm married to Siri,
Siri.
so everyone thought, oh, this is Siri. Iris is Siri. But in fact, Siri, who's a wonderful novelist in her own right, wrote her first novel, The Blindfold, and the main character, the heroine, was Iris. So, which is Siri spelled backwards.
Yes.
And so
I have that book here.
You
In
have
Portuguese,
yes.
it's called De Olhos Vendados. Yes.
So anyway, I wanted to have my character marry her character, because poor Iris at the end was not in such great shape. So I wanted to give her a happy ending, at least a marriage to a man who loved her. And it was a trans-fictional marriage, and really nothing to do with us at all.
Well, but you have a daughter in the book, in Leviathan, who is called Sonia, and you and Siri, you have a daughter called Sophie, and then you have another son, who is called, I think, Michael.
Daniel.
David, and there's a David and a Daniel.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really something.
Well, I did use certain elements in that book, but mostly not. But interestingly enough, with Leviathan, when I was writing the book, we used to go up to Vermont, which is in New England, during the summers, and some of this book is set in Vermont. And I always did a lot of writing there, and for the first and only time as a novelist, I was sitting in a room this very ugly little shack with this beaten up green table. And that's where I was writing. And I put it in the book. And I sit, and I have the narrator say, I'm sitting in this room at this green table. Now, it doesn't mean anything for the reader. It just, they don't know that I'm actually there. But I wanted to experiment to see if putting this kind of material in a novel would make it more vivid or change something for me. And finally, it doesn't at all. No, the table, even though it's real, becomes fictional the moment you put it in a novel. It doesn't exist as a tangible object anymore. It's a word on a page. It's a fascinating transformation.
So, and that happens all the time with your writing. The fiction goes on all alone. Sometimes, yes, strange things happen. It's true. How do you start writing a book? Is there a story before everything? It's
a great mystery to me. I can tell you that in almost every case, the books that I've written have taken years of thought before I've even started to write them. I don't really understand what it is. An idea comes to me, some person or even something stranger, some kind of rhythm, some kind of music in language. And then you have one element. And then suddenly, there's a second element that gets attached to it. And this grows very slowly over the years. I've never been able to witness the birth of an idea. This is something also very strange. What I mean is to say, one moment, it's not there. And then the next moment, there's a thought in your head that hadn't existed. And I never can understand, I never feel it happening, but boom, there it is.
And that happens while you're writing?
No, or sometimes writing, but just walking around the streets, thinking about what I want to do or thinking about this story that's growing inside me. So it takes years, and then I finally have a moment where I say, I think I'm ready to write. I think I understand what I'm doing. I have a sense of the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Do you know the end of the book before writing it?
I think I do. Well, just let me explain. So a sense of where the story is going, a sense of who's in the book, who the characters are. And then I start writing, and everything changes. It's just always that way. Somehow the act of writing gives you new ideas. And then you discover that ideas you thought were good are no good. And so things are changing all the time.
And people change too? The characters?
The characters, generally not. But a case, for example, Mr. Vertigo,
yes.
A book I wrote in the early 90s. I thought this was going to be a short story of about 30 pages.
Uh-huh.
And then I started writing, and it got bigger and bigger. And then suddenly, this new character came in that I had never thought of, Mrs. Witherspoon, Master Yehudi's woman. And she became a very big character in the book. But until I started writing, I didn't know she was there. So these little things are happening all the time. And I understood, I think, with this book, that it's a bit like the Pinocchio story. You see? And that you needed the blue fairy. Remember that there's the blue fairy, and that's who Mrs. Witherspoon is. And Master Yehudi is Geppetto, and Walt is Pinocchio. And but I didn't understand that until after I had finished the book.
And then there were some criticists who told you that, who explained that to you, or
no,
it was something you found
I realized later. Yeah.
Because the critics, when they write about you, do they explain anything that you didn't realize before, or is it really strange?
Every once in a while, somebody will say something that's that I hadn't thought of, and then I realized, oh, that's true. For example, I remember this was years ago, In the Country of Last Things.
Yes.
in this imaginary country, they have currency. The money is called glot. I was thinking kind of like Polish zlotys or something like that. Glot. I like the sound of it. And some reviewer pointed out that glot means tongue. And it's true. And I
In
realized,
Polish?
no, in Latin.
In Latin.
And
Oh, yes.
yes.
Glot.
And and then it's all about words. And I thought, how interesting. This
What a
person's probably right, right? Right.
And in Mr. Timbuktu, how do you say that?
Timbuktu.
Timbuktu. The character went around alone to. Is it true? Because I read one interview you gave when you published this book, and it was a short story, but Mr. Timbuktu and Mr. Christmas.
Mr. Bones, Willie G. Christmas, and Mr. Bones.
Mr.
That's
Bones.
the dog, Mr. Bones.
Or just a part of another novel.
That's true. This is the novel that I've just finished now, which is called The Brooklyn Follies.
Brooklyn Follies.
See, I had these two as characters in this much bigger story that I had in my mind. And I wanted the book to begin with them. And then I started writing it, and I realized I really like these characters, the dog and the poet, the wandering clochard poets. And I decided to make a little book just about them. But by taking them out of this bigger story, I kind of destroyed the structure of this thing I had in my mind. And it took me a long time to figure out how to remake that book, which had so many other characters as well. And so that's what I've been working on for the last couple of years, and I finished a few months ago. And
when you finish a book, it's really finished. It's goodbye.
It's goodbye.
Goodbye.
It really is goodbye.
Isn't it boring to talk to speak about all those books?
Well, you see, what happens is you work and work and work. You're living with these people for years, finally, and then the moment comes that you're done. You can't write another word. You can't change another sentence.
How do you know that?
You just feel I can't do anything more. I look at every sentence in the book, and it's the way it should be. At least I think it is, and I'm done. And then you have to say goodbye to them, and it's sad because they've been part of your life. They've been your companions for all this time, and I think that's why I tend to feel rather sad when I'm finished with a book.
So now it's you are really sad about the Brooklyn Follies.
Well, yeah, and
you miss the book.
Well, I do in a way. I miss writing it, but I did something different this time, because usually I go into a slump after the book is finished, a book, and so someone asked me to write a screenplay, and I thought, if I do this right after I'm done with the novel, maybe I won't fall into that hole that I usually do. So I accepted this job. It's for Patrice Lecomte, the French film director, and but in English, to be shot in America. And I collaborated with a young French writer friend who lives in New York, and we did it together. And it was good medicine, I must say.
But
made me
do you have
get
in
over
this
the book.
screenplay? Do you have the characters of Brooklyn Follies?
Oh no, it's something
totally
completely different. It was for Patrice. It's based on a Georges Simenon novel, in fact, from long time ago, which we completely changed. Absolutely.
Which novel?
It's called Les Fiançailles de Monsieur Hir. See, Lecomte made a movie, Monsieur Hir, about 15 years ago.
Yes.
And then he wanted to do a kind of a remake in America of the same story. But this friend, Céline Corriol, just published her first novel in France.
Wow. I don't know her.
No, well, the book just came out. She's a wonderful writer. And we started looking at the film. There had been another film based on this book, and reading the book as well. And we said, no, we're going to do something completely different. So we...
Same characters?
No,
of Simenon?
no, we changed it. Monsieur Ir is really Irowitz. And it's a book about anti-Semitism at the bottom. And, well, we started thinking about who are the most hated people in America today.
Who are they?
Arabs, Muslims. And so we made our main character an Egyptian immigrant. And so the story just has a whole different flavor. It's all about post-9/11 America, Patriot Act, Homeland Security, and it's a very political in its undertones. It's not overtly political, but there's a lot going on about the contemporary life in America, the political scene.
That's a problem has always concerned you, the problem, the politic problem. But it's really, as you told, it's not a manifesto. It's not something you say just like that. It's there. It's there.
It's there. Yeah. It's just always in the background or in the center of books. Social conditions, political problems. Sometimes
racial problems too.
Racial problems too. Sometimes more overtly than others. But a book like The Music of Chance, which is not about politics on the surface, I think of as a parable about power. And in this new book, The Brooklyn Follies, there are people talking about politics sort of rather overtly in a way that I hadn't ever done before.
Because 9/11 has changed everything, or not? Can you say that?
In a way, yes, and in a way, no. The life of New York goes on. People have picked themselves up and are functioning. I mean, and it happens rather quickly. Within several months, I think the city was back to its old energy. But we all walk around with this wound inside ourselves, too. I think of it as a big family tragedy. It's as if, you know, your parents have been killed in a car crash. It's that kind of thing. But we all experience this on a big level as a city. But even after your parents die, you know, life goes on. You get up, you have to go to work, you have to go to school, and the rhythms of the everyday take over again. So, but it's still there. You never forget. Politically, I think I don't want to get into a big talk about American politics right now.
Of course. But it wasn't the point of this interview.
But I do think that you know, the Bush administration has used 9/11 to further aims that they had all along that really have nothing to do with 9/11. Iraq, for example.
Yes.
So it's very complicated indeed.
Yes, but you have a different attitude in New York City and in the rest of the country, the rest of the United States. Can you say that?
Well, New York is a special place. Yet I think what's happened is the country is kind of split in two right now. And
the elections reveal.
Yes, and they show that. I mean, you look at the blue states and the red states, everyone keeps talking about, but it is this group of northeastern states, New York, New England, etc., and we seem to be living in one kind of country, or want one kind of country, and people in the south and the middle seem to want another kind of country. So it's and then on the west, they're sort of like us in the east. And
wasn't it traditional in United States?
No, it's evolved over the years. It's changed. The South always used to be for the Democrats.
Well, I don't want to insist in political matters. I know you have interviewed Chico Buarque.
Yes.
Well, we know very, very well Chico Buarque. We love him. I love him. So, how come have you done that?
I'll tell you what happened. Last summer, Siri and I went to Brazil to a literary festival in Paraty.
Yes.
And Chico was there as one of the writers. And for some reason, they were pairing writers for different events, and they put us together. And so we had this event in which it was very fun, I must say. I read from his book, Budapest, in the English translation.
Yes.
He read from my book, Oracle Night, in the Portuguese translation. And then I read my own work in English. He read his own work in Portuguese. So we went back and forth.
Yeah.
And then we were interviewed by someone on stage. So that was in July. And now in April, in New York, PEN, I don't know if you know.
PEN Club,
PEN,
yes.
the writers organization, of which I'm a member. In fact, vice president now. And,
Mr. Vice President.
yes, Mr. Vice President. So, but it is a good organization. It's a real human rights organization,
Yes.
fighting to get writers out of jail around the world. And so it's a worthy thing. Anyway, we
Salman
decided,
Rushdie is
Salman
with you.
he's the
Yes,
president.
he's the president.
Salman's president, I'm vice president. So anyway, we decided to have an international literary festival in New York because America has shut down. It's closed in on itself. You know, we're not a country looking to other countries anymore for arts, for books, for films, for music. And we thought it would be a great idea to invite, and it was 120 writers came from all over the world. 120 into New York for an entire week of events. I think there were something like 45 or 50 events. And there were writers from Africa, Asia, South America, Europe. And our goal was to get the American writers in New York to introduce these writers to the public. So it wasn't about us, it was all about them, the people coming from abroad. So Chico was invited, and he said, well, I want to do it with Paul, because he liked the other time, and he felt comfortable, because he's a very shy person.
Yes.
Very shy. And so we had become friendly, and he felt comfortable with me. And so I just did this about 2 weeks ago, and at the New York Public Library. And he told me after that he liked it very much, and he felt comfortable.
Well,
and
I read about it in some papers in the internet, and people in New York didn't know he was a musician.
No, and he told me he has never.
It's very strange.
He has
for us.
never performed in New York, and his records are not available in the United States. So it's as if he doesn't exist.
So
as
he's
singer.
a writer in New York.
He's a writer in New York. Yes, yes. But it was interesting. Half the people in the audience were Brazilian, so they all knew him, and they were there to see their hero.
Of course, but he didn't sing.
He didn't sing. No. He just talked about his work. But he talked a lot about songwriting also.
He talked about hearing music while you're writing. Do you hear music while you write?
No, I don't listen to music.
Why?
Because I need total silence. I mean, my words are the music, and if I'm listening to something else, it interferes. And he said too that day, anyone who, writes and listens to music doesn't like music at all.
That's
because to listen to music, that's what you have to do, listen to music.
yes, but
So-
do you like music?
I love music, all kinds of music.
Yes,
It's
I
a
know.
passion.
It's a passion.
Yeah.
But you don't know how to sing. You don't understand.
I don't play, I don't
you don't
sing.
play.
All I do is listen, but I enjoy it a great deal.
And you enjoy especially your daughter,
Oh,
Sophie
well,
Auster.
yes.
I heard her yesterday in the internet. It's the only place where I could hear her, listen to her.
Yeah, well, she's...
I'm trying to improve my English.
Your English is great. It's great.
Thank
it's
you.
Better
You're
than
very
mine
kind.
now. Yes, our daughter, Sophie, 17, has just released a CD with a group of musicians in New York. It's a very little thing. They made 1,000 copies, and you can get it on the internet. That's how you buy it.
Yes,
And,
I heard some of the songs.
But
yes.
she does have a beautiful voice.
Yes, wonderful.
It's amazing.
Isn't it a miracle to have a daughter like that?
It is. It is. I'm overwhelmed. She's also acting and wants to pursue that. And, you know, I'm her father, so of course I think she's great, but I really do think she's great, and I think she'll make it.
Yes?
Yeah.
Does she want to write too? No. Just to
No,
perform
she wants to
and,
act and sing, and but she, you know, she's still in high school, and
Yes,
yeah,
17.
she's going to college next year, and so she'll be studying too.
I saw the photograph. She's a mixture of you and Siri.
Yeah, but better. She just she got
She improved
all the
it.
good parts and none of the bad parts.
Well, you talked about Mr. Christmas, and you are a poet too. You write poetry.
I used to. I haven't written poetry
No?
in years.
Why? It doesn't come?
That's a long story. This was 25, 26 years ago, and I'd been writing poems, and suddenly I came to a wall, and I couldn't do it anymore, and I stopped. And I didn't really write for about a year, and then when I started writing again, it was prose. And ever since, it's all been prose. So I've had two lives as a writer.
Yes.
Young man poet, old man novelist.
Well, you're not an old man, but that's you have translated poetry from French
Yes.
to
Yeah.
English. Does the work of translating learn you?
Teach.
Teach.
Yeah.
Thank you. Teach you anything about writing?
Oh, yes. And I did it passionately as a young person, particularly in my late teens and early 20s. That's when I was doing most of the translation of poetry that I did. There is no better way to, first of all, read a poem than to try to translate it. Because you have to get right inside the bone structure, the circulatory system of the work, the whole organism, and understand it bit by bit and how it all interacts. And then for very young people just starting to write, translation is a wonderful way to exercise your craft, so to speak, to learn the art of writing without having the pressure of being original, having to invent something. You know, you're really working on the level of the sentence and the words, and you teach yourself what sounds good, how to make a sentence that has some kind of harmony to it.
Yes.
And so I think it's a great exercise. Ezra Pound, you know, the American poet, he always recommended young poets should translate. That's the best school. And
Well, you translated very good poets.
yeah, well, you want to deal
Yes,
with
Baudelaire.
good poets. Yes.
The good ones,
Yeah.
not the bad ones.
Mallarmé and other really good writers. And there was a period when I was teaching in America at Princeton, and I had a translation class. I was the teacher this time, and I had the students work for the whole semester just on one poet. I said, pick a poet, but it has to be a good poet, a great poet, a poet that I approve of, and then spend the whole time working on that person's work. And they produced fabulous work after a while. Some of the translations were splendid, as good as anything that had ever been published.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, you have another area of work, the movies, the filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
You're a filmmaker too. Can I say that?
Yes, I have been. Yeah.
Lulu on the Bridge
Yes.
and Blue on the Face.
And Smoke.
Smoke,
Yeah.
especially Smoke. Do you like it? To do
I love it. I love it. It was something that I came to pretty late, but because of this collaboration that I made with Wayne Wang, the American director, you know, he lured me into it. I had always been fascinated by film, and had even thought when I was young of trying to become a director, but you know, took another path. At first, I wasn't even going to write the script for Smoke.
Wow.
But then
There was a story about smoke.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
A bookstore. No, a cigar.
Cigar story, right. It was a little story I had written in the New York Times. I had been commissioned to write. And Wayne had read it and thought, oh, this could make an interesting film. Well, I won't tell the whole story, but eventually I wrote the screenplay. And then when it was time to make the film, he said, you know, I've never filmed in New York. I need you there. Make the film with me. So it's very unusual. Directors usually get the script and they say goodbye to the writer. Yes. This time, no, we did everything together. And so it was like going to film school. I learned how to make a film. And then we didn't make one, but 2 films. And so I got involved in it on every level, from, you know, casting to production design to editing to costumes to makeup, music, everything. And I loved it.
It's the opposite of your work, of
Yes,
writing.
I know. That's why I loved it. It was good to get out of my room. It was good to work with other people. And it was good to learn a new way to tell a story, I think. And so a few years later, I made the film on my own. And I think if I can, I want to do it again now. I mean, I have a script and some actors who want to do it. I just have to find the money. So if I find the money, that'll be my next project. If I don't, well, it won't happen. We'll see.
So you don't miss writing now?
Well,
You don't want to write?
I'm in between books, and I worked on that screenplay for this film. So, and I just finished. So, you can't write every minute. I have to take a little pause.
But the story of your next book, next book. When I say the next book is the next you are going to write, do you have anything now? Any elements?
Yeah, I have things kicking around, and I'm not ready to write it. It's too soon, but there is something bubbling under the surface. I can feel it happening. But I just have to let my unconscious do the work. If you force things, they don't come. So you just have to be patient, and then suddenly this thing is there.
Well, I read that you acknowledged that you wanted to be a writer when you were a teenager. How can you say that so clearly? How did you understand that?
I don't know. I loved reading as a child. Right from the beginning. Books were important to me. And I even wrote when I was young, at 9, 10, 11. There was a moment, I think I was about 12. I wrote a little novel. I wasn't very big.
Do you have it?
No, it's lost. 12 years old, and the teacher in the class let me read it out loud to the students a little bit every day at the end of school. And just the idea of being a writer to me was the most exciting thing possible. But I wasn't really serious about it till, when I was 16 or 17. But I really started writing then. Every day I was writing.
But it is a difficult life. Well, when you started, you have written that, and from hand to mouth?
Yeah.
It was really difficult.
It was tough, yeah. I was rejected by everybody for years. But still...
Now that's a joke, no?
Well, it's happened to other people too. It's so strange how the lives of writers can vary. People who are kicked around, and then suddenly everyone thinks they're great. Or some are lucky and they get started right away and have great careers. Others look like they're going to be great early. They write a book or two and then they fade away. So you just never know what's going to happen.
So you started with your translations, but you wrote all the time?
Yeah.
Fiction and poetry? Well,
yes,
it
both.
was poetry mainly.
Well, I was writing fiction as a younger person and trying in my early 20s too. I literally wrote thousands of pages of fiction, but I didn't like it. I could never finish any of the books I started. I was too young. I just wasn't ready. So I put it all to the side, and I finally gave up. And I said, all right, I'm just going to stick to poems because I can do this. And I just don't like the fiction I'm writing. But then, you know, after this break, as I was talking about, everything changed again. And there are actually things in some of my early novels that I took from writings from way before. You know, the beginning of Moon Palace was something I'd started before. In the Country of Last Things, I was in my early 20s when I started trying to write that book. There are things in City of Glass that I stole from another manuscript that I had been writing when I was in my early 20s.
Well, you stole from yourself.
I stole from myself, yes.
City of Glass, well, is adapted to bande dessinée.
Yes, yes.
How comics?
Comics, yeah.
Comics. How do you see that?
Well, this was an interesting story. It happened about 11 years ago. I think it was 94 it came out. One of my best friends in New York is Art Spiegelman, who's the great comics man, the author of Mouse, the comics man. And he was always after me to do a comic. He said, why don't you write one? Why don't you write one? I'm just not that interested in it. And finally when...
But do you like comics?
No, I never read them. Only Art. He's the only one. So after a while, he understood that I was never going to do it. And but he and another man started a program, a series of adapting novels into comics. And so mine was the first one in the series, City of Glass. David Mazzucchelli and Paul Karasik, those are the two people who did it. Art was just the supervisor. And then the whole thing fell apart, and so that was the only one they ever published. So it's too complicated to go into all the details. But anyway, it was published then.
Was it strange to see that?
I liked it. I thought it was very, very interesting. It was almost like looking at the storyboards for a film.
Yes.
In some way. And the only thing I asked them was, you know, you can do whatever you want. You can take out as much as you want. Just don't add any words that I didn't write. So all the words are from the book. And I think it's very inventive. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And it went out of print in America. Now they've reissued it. So it's back on the bookshelves in the stores.
So there's your life as a poet and then your life as a fictionist. Is there another life after that? Well, you are a director, film director, but is there something you want to do?
Something I want to do? No, I want to just keep doing what I do. I love what I do. And I can't think of a luckier person than I am to be able to do what I want to do.
Yes, and you have chosen a Portuguese theme here in Oracle's Night.
Yes,
well,
yes.
The story of the notebook, the blue notebook.
Yes.
Well, I tried to buy some blue notebook, but I wasn't able to do that. Well, I've told you that Françoise Shine.
Yes, our mutual friend.
Our mutual friend. She told me that she sends you. When she comes to Lisbon, she sends you a Portuguese notebook. Did you know it was her who sent you?
No, I didn't know. Well, she's a very clever woman, and she does things in secret. But when I wrote the book, I didn't have a Portuguese blue notebook. I made it all up, and I don't know why I picked Portugal. It had to come from somewhere. But you know, I've been to Lisbon. This is now my third visit, and I like it very much here. And
what about Lisbon?
I think it's beautiful, and I like the fact that the past still exists here. You know, there's that old city from the Middle Ages, and So it gives this city a different quality from most other capitals in Europe. And Lisbon and Portugal are way off to the side of Europe. It's not the center of anything. It's the edge. And making the edge is more mysterious to me than the center. And so maybe that's why I made the notebook come from Portugal.
Well, maybe we suffer from that, from being on the edge and not being in the center.
Yes, but
you think it's a good.
I don't think you suffer at all, because Portugal became the place that moved out. I mean, you're the great explorer country and maritime country, and all the sailors and so it's just Portugal looks into the Atlantic as much as it does to the rest of Europe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And do you know Fernando Pessoa? Because
not personally.
Not personally, no.
No, we didn't overlap. But his work, yes, and
Yes?
I like it very much.
Well,
Yeah.
you like it very well. Do you think it's what do you think is special about him?
Well, this idea of hiding behind the masks of 4 different poets, the heteronyms, is well, it's a great idea, and it's like fiction in real life. You know, this poet who would hide behind these different personalities, these different styles, and I think it expresses something in all of us. That's why we respond so much, because we're all multiple. We're never, no person is just one. We're multiple, or as I like to think of it, a kind of a gamut, a scale, a spectrum.
Yes.
You know, the human soul, the human personality. We go from one mood to another, one point of view to another. One day, something will make us laugh. The next day, that same thing will make us cry. You know, we're very unstable, and I think Pessoa somehow expresses that in the human soul, and it makes his work especially important, I think. On top of the fact that he's a good poet,
Yes.
you know, in all the different modes that he wrote, but the fact that he was all these people is fantastic.
Well, maybe it's the same exercise that you do in your books.
Well,
no?
that's what I'm saying. It's like fiction. It
Yes,
feels
because
that way.
characters are not plain. Is it clear for you?
Yeah.
It's not a line.
No.
They
They go here, they go there,
yes.
and but that's the pleasure in writing novels too, is that you get to express all sides of yourself, because you know all the characters are different. They're doing different things. They think differently. They act differently. Some of them are, you know, impossible people. Some of them are generous people. Some of them are stupid people, and you can be all those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in this novel, Brooklyn Follies, do you have any characters from other books?
No.
No?
No, they're all new people.
Don't you make them survive? Well, you did that to Iris.
Yes, yes,
You
yes.
married
Yeah.
Iris with your character.
Yeah, the only time.
I mean, don't you miss your characters and so make them survive?
Oh, you mean to write about them again?
Yes.
Every once in a while, I'm tempted to do it. I have to say, I think about all these people, and I would like to write something about them, but I think it's a bad impulse. It's not something that I think I should do. It's sentimentality more than, you know, real rigorous thought, and so I resist the impulse. The only time I took a character from one book and put him in another is Zimmer.
Yes.
He was a minor character in Moon Palace,
And
then he
then-
becomes a major character in the Book of Illusions. Yeah.
In the Book of Illusions, you have a filmmaker.
Yes.
Not really a film, but a filmmaker. But it's a, you say, mute film?
Silent.
Silent movie.
Silent movies, yeah.
Of course. You wrote some silent movies. you wrote some
Yes, when I was
screenplays.
young, I was about 19 years old. I always loved silent comedies.
Why
I love
silent
them
comedies?
because
you're
they're
a writer?
funnier than talkies. They're just they express something so fundamental about the human condition, and they really do make you laugh when they're good. And
Yes.
it's ballet, it's choreography, it's dance, and it's a beautiful, beautiful way. So that all these pratfalls, all these slips, somehow are metaphors about the human spirit, and
Yes.
so I love it.
So actor man,
Yeah.
Is a hero for you, no? Someone who can make a film, who can make you laugh.
Make you laugh, yeah. What a talent, huh? People
Yes.
who can make us laugh are
That's happiness.
very rare. It's very rare.
Yes. Is it? Are the moments of writing moments of happiness or suffering? Because there are writers who say, "Well, I suffer when I'm writing," and other ones say they are happy about writing.
It's both. There are days when I feel so happy and everything is coming just the way I want it to. And then other days where it's terrible and I can't express myself the way I want to. And I find it very painful. So it's both. You have your good days and your bad days. I think getting older, the one thing that's helped, I can't think of any advantages to getting older except this one, is that when I used to get stuck when I was working, when I was younger, I would really go into a panic. I think, oh my God, the book is dead. I don't know what to do. I'm just, unable to go on. But of course, I'd eventually figure out the next step. Now, when I come to that point, I say, all right, just be patient, and you're going to figure it out. Just don't panic. So I'm a little calmer about the work than I used to be.
Is aging a problem for you?
No. I find it strange, but it's not a problem.
Is it possible that aging is reflected in your books now?
I think so. In the last few books, the characters have tended to be a little older, or some of the characters, suffering from physical problems, the way one tends to after you hit a certain age. So in some sense, some of these last books have been chronicles of debilitated men.
Well,
but at the same time, this new idea kicking around in my head has nothing to do with that at all. So maybe I'm resigning myself to my current state.
well, you know a lot more than you did when you were young, no?
Yeah, but I think I've forgotten things too.
In Leviathan, you have those two writers. One writes with, it's really easy for him to write, and the other one thinks it's really difficult. So
Yes.
when you said now, sometimes it's very easy, and other times you are stuck. Those characters are.
Well, I'm more like the slow one. I've never written quickly. If I can get one page done a day, I feel that I've done a good day's work. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, but sometimes it's none. So if I can get one page, then I'm happy. But some writers I know can just sit down and write 15 pages in one day. A fiction. I don't know how it's possible. They have their brains are wired in a different way. They have more direct access to language, I guess. Whereas for me, I'm just struggling to find the right word all the time.
The right word?
Yeah.
It's not the sentence, it's the word.
The word and the word, and then the sentence also. But without the word, there is no sentence. So.
And the commas, la virgule,
The punctuation, commas.
punctuations.
Yeah.
Yes. Is it difficult?
No, that's the easy
Because
part.
it's something you do very well.
Well, I think about punctuation. I like commas very much. Some writers don't like commas, but I like them. I like sometimes to slow down the rhythm of a sentence with a comma.
Yes.
Yeah.
We noticed that.
Yeah.
Well, there's a very strange book. It's not something you have written. It's I thought my father was God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pensei que o meu pai era Deus. Can you tell me something about this book?
Well, this was a project that I did for the National Public Radio in the United States. It was 1999, and I think Timbuktu had just been published, and I was asked to do an interview on the radio. And I went into the New York studio, and their headquarters are in Washington, so I couldn't even see the person I was talking to. We had headphones on. And I did the interview, and I think I read also from the book. And when the interview was over, the host at the other end in Washington said, "You know, we liked the way you sounded on the radio. How would you like to be part of the program?" I said, "Radio? What are you talking about?" And they said, "Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe you come on and tell stories every month or so." I said, "Oh, well, thanks, I'll think about it." I wasn't interested at all. And I went home that evening and told my wife Siri about it, and she was the one who had the idea. She said, no, you don't have to write stories. Get the listeners to write in stories about their own lives. And if you get enough, it could be really extraordinary. And I got all excited by this idea. And so we launched something called the National Story Project. And every month, I would pick the best stories that had come in, and I would read them on the radio. I got 4,000 in 1 year. Yeah, I did it for a year.
And those were real stories.
Real stories by real people.
And real extraordinary.
They are amazing.
Amazing.
Because I had said, when I announced the plan, I said, short, true stories. They can be funny, they can be tragic, they can be about big things or little things, but I want them to be stories that betray or go against our idea of what we think reality is. Mm-hmm. In other words, true stories that sound like fiction.
Yes.
That was what I asked for. And they came pouring in, and I'll tell you, it was really interesting. And so there were so many good ones, and I couldn't read them all on the radio, so we did this book. I put together this anthology of 180 of the best ones.
You didn't read those stories, all those stories in the radio?
No.
On the radio?
On the radio, no.
No?
But because I did it for 12 months, 13 months.
So 12
and I read
stories.
I would do 5 or 6. So maybe I read 50 or 60.
Yes. Well, but they are really amazing.
Amazing.
And did it teach you anything about life?
Well, yes. I have to say that it was partly an experiment, a philosophical experiment. I wanted to see if other people's lives were as strange as mine. You know, if things like what I write in the red notebook and so on are common to other people. So that was the first motive. And I'm happy to report the answer is yes. I mean, weird things are happening all the time to everybody. And but secondly, it was kind of a political idea too, to give so-called ordinary people a chance to be heard. You know, America's become this gigantic media culture of gossip and celebrities, and nobody cares about the real lives of real people anymore. And so I felt I was doing my little bit to change that somewhat. I mean, it's just a drop in the bucket, but I kept getting letters from people who submitted saying, thank you for letting the people be heard. And it was very comforting to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And strange too.
Yeah.
Why society doesn't listen to ordinary people?
I don't know, because there is no ordinary person. This is the thing. Everybody has an inner life. everybody has a soul. And, you know, what I feel is what you feel too. And we keep forgetting that all the time. We think if people aren't highly educated or highly successful, that somehow they're less worthy than other people. But it's far from the truth, really. And so here the American people are speaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And a good work for the future.
Thanks.